What if I told you the smoothest song of 1980 was almost never recorded, and the man who made it never got a second chance to top it? He wasn't a California kid. He wasn't a studio creation. He was a Brooklyn street corner singer who spent a decade learning his craft the hard way, playing dingy clubs in Greenwich Village, hauling gear across the Northeast, writing songs in a small house upstate that nobody was asking for yet. He had Marvin Gaye's soul and Sam Cooke's precision, and a voice that sounded like it was built for summer radio. When his moment finally came, he delivered everything the industry asked for: 2 top 10 hits, a Grammy nomination, an album that still sounds immaculate today. Then the label dropped him while he was recording his 3rd album, mid-session, no ceremony, no phone call. Steal Away has been played on American radio over 4 million times. Robbie Dupree has not had a major label record deal since the early 1980s. If you haven't done so, like and subscribe. Here is how Robbie Dupree built the perfect soft rock moment and watched the industry walk away before the echo faded. He started where a lot of great voices start, nowhere special, just a block in Brooklyn, a group of kids harmonizing on a corner because there was nothing else to do and the music felt like everything. Robert Dupuis was born December 23rd, 1946, in the East New York section of Brooklyn. The neighborhood was not glamorous, but it had sound. Doo-wop coming out of doorways, Marvin Gaye on the radio, Sam Cooke on the record player, a kid who could hear the difference between a note that landed and a note that didn't. Robbie Dupree, the name he would eventually take to the charts, was that kid. And from the beginning, he was absorbing everything. By 1970, he had made his way to Greenwich Village. The scene there was electric. Folk was giving way to rock. Soul was bleeding into everything. And on the club circuit, playing original songs in rooms that smelled like cigarettes and ambition, Dupree found himself in a band called New World Rising, alongside a guitarist nobody had heard of yet. That guitarist was Nile Rodgers, the same Nile Rodgers who would go on to co-found Chic, produce David Bowie, and reshape the sound of popular music for the next 4 decades. At the time, they were just 2 guys trying to get noticed in a city full of people trying to get noticed. New World Rising broke up in 1971, and instead of chasing the next opportunity in New York, Dupree did something that, in retrospect, looks either like wisdom or stubbornness. He moved to Woodstock, not the festival, the town, a small arts colony in upstate New York where the band had recorded, where Paul Butterfield lived, where serious musicians went to write and breathe and figure out what they actually had to say. He stayed for 7 years, 7 years of writing songs, playing with local musicians, touring the East Coast in bands that went nowhere commercially, but sharpened everything about him: his phrasing, his ear for a melody, his understanding of what made a song stick. This is the part of Robbie Dupree's story that almost nobody knows, because the story everyone tells starts in 1980 with Steal Away on the radio, and a debut album that seemed to arrive from nowhere. But nothing arrives from nowhere. Behind that effortless summer sound was a decade of work. In 1978, the moment almost happened a different way entirely. Dupree was on the verge of signing a deal with Mercury Records. The ink was close to dry, and then he walked away from it. He later said he didn't want to be locked into a 3 to 5 year contract that might take him somewhere he didn't want to go. So he gave the deal to his bandmates, gave away some of the songs he had written, and moved to Los Angeles with $40 in his pocket. $40, starting from scratch at 31 years old, in a city he barely knew. But Woodstock had given him something: connections. Dupree landed on his feet quickly, linking up with 2 old friends, bassist and producer Rick Chudikoff, and drummer and producer Peter Bonetta. The 3 of them had a chemistry that was immediate. Chudikoff and Bonetta had deep roots in the Los Angeles session scene. They understood the sound that was dominating adult contemporary radio: smooth, groove-driven, built on keyboards and layered harmonies and vocals that felt warm even through a car speaker. They got to work. Dupree had the songs. Chudikoff and Bonetta had the production instincts. They recorded a 5-song demo. Dupree shopped it himself. No takers. He was broke enough at one point that he took a job loading carpet onto trucks to cover his rent. The demo sat, the songs waited, and then Elektra Records said yes. The self-titled debut album came out in 1980. It peaked at number 51 on the Billboard 200. That sounds modest until you hear what came off of it. Steal Away entered the Billboard Hot 100 in April of 1980 at number 85. By July, it had climbed to number 6, where it sat for 2 weeks. It spent 23 weeks on the chart total, including 7 weeks in the top 10, number 5 on the adult contemporary chart. Summer of 1980, Steal Away was everywhere on AM radio, on FM radio, coming out of open car windows, playing in restaurants, the kind of song that felt like it had always existed. Hot Rod Hearts followed and reached number 15. Dupree was on American Bandstand in May, on the Midnight Special. He received a Grammy nomination for Best New Artist. He was on his way. You probably heard Steal Away that summer. You might not have known his name, but you heard it. But here's the turn. The song that made Robbie Dupree famous arrived with an asterisk attached, and the industry made sure he never forgot it. From the moment Steal Away hit radio, the comparisons started. Not comparisons to other artists in a flattering way. Accusations. Listeners called into stations, music writers put it in print. The claim was simple and damaging. Steal Away sounded too much like What a Fool Believes by the Doobie Brothers. The groove, the keyboard pattern, the vocal phrasing, the similarities were hard to ignore. The Los Angeles Times called it plainly a rip-off of the Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins composition. The Washington Post noted the resemblances in print. McDonald's publishers reportedly explored legal action. Here is the detail that makes it land harder. Dupree's own producers, Rick Chudikoff and Peter Bonetta, were connected to the same Los Angeles studio world that produced What a Fool Believes. The arranger on that Doobie Brothers track, Lester Abrams, had worked directly with Chudikoff and Bonetta. These were not strangers operating in separate worlds. They were part of the same tight circle of session professionals who built the sound of West Coast pop in the late 1970s. The keyboard riff at the heart of Steal Away did not emerge from a vacuum. It emerged from a scene. And that scene had a sound that was already owned, at least in the public's mind, by Michael McDonald. McDonald himself did not personally accuse Dupree of stealing his song. He stayed quiet, but the cloud hung there anyway. And Dupree spent interviews acknowledging that, yes, he had been influenced by the Doobie Brothers sound. That acknowledgement, offered honestly, became the headline. The man whose song was climbing the charts was simultaneously defending whether the song was his to begin with. The timing of this could not have been worse. Elektra Records had a decision to make. They had a new artist with 2 top 10 singles and a Grammy nomination. They had momentum. The correct business move. The move that Christopher Cross's label made, the move that Kenny Loggins' label made, was to protect the artist, push back against the narrative, and build toward a second album with everything they had. Promotion, radio relationships, a clear marketing identity. Elektra did not do that. The promotion on the debut was modest at best. For a record that produced 2 top 10 singles, the label's investment in Robbie Dupree as a long-term artist was thin. There was no aggressive push to establish who he was beyond the song. No story built around the Brooklyn kid who had spent a decade in Woodstock learning his craft. No angle that separated him from the smooth West Coast sound he had been accused of borrowing. Just the singles, just the radio. And when the singles stopped climbing, the attention stopped with them. In 1981, Dupree returned with his second album, Street Corner Heroes. Same production team. Same studio. Same level of craft. Brooklyn Girls was a genuine piece of yacht rock songwriting. Tight, melodic, built to last. It reached number 54 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album charted at number 169 on the Billboard 200. Not a disaster, but not what the debut had promised. But here is what nobody tells you about Street Corner Heroes. The label had already started to pull back. The promotion was quieter. The radio push was softer. the infrastructure that turns a good record into a hit, the phone calls to program directors, the tour support, the marketing spend, was shrinking. Elektra was deciding, without saying so out loud, that Robbie Dupree was not worth the investment of a full second campaign. The sophomore album that should have been a statement became something closer to an afterthought, and Dupree could feel it. He said later that the label had disengaged, that the loving feel was gone. In an interview, he described Elektra the way you describe a landlord who has already rented your apartment to someone else, still technically present, not actually there. He went back into the studio to record a third album. The sessions were underway. The songs were being tracked. And then Elektra Records stopped the recording, mid-session, not at the end of a contract cycle, not after a conversation about creative direction. In the middle of making the record, they told him his West Coast sound was outdated. His own response years later was precise. Like all lame corporate companies, no third album, no send-off, no explanation beyond the market had moved, and he had not moved with it. Think about what that moment actually means. Not the business version of it, the human version. You are Robbie Dupree. You spent 7 years in Woodstock, writing songs in near total obscurity. You walked away from a Mercury Records deal because it didn't feel right. You moved to Los Angeles with $40. You loaded carpet onto trucks to pay rent while your demos sat on desks collecting silence. And then it worked. The song landed. The summer belonged to you, 4 million radio spins. A Grammy nomination. Your name on billboards. And now you are standing in a recording studio mid-session, and someone from Elektra Records is telling you it's over. Not because the songs are bad, not because you showed up late or made demands or became difficult, because the sound you built your career on, the sound they signed you to make, the sound they put on the radio and collected money from, had become inconvenient for their quarterly projections. That is all it took. A corporate decision made by people who would not remember his name in 5 years. But here is the kicker. The sound Elektra called outdated in the early 1980s did not die. It went dormant, and when it came back enormous. The internet generation discovered yacht rock in the 2000s and treated it not as a guilty pleasure, but as a legitimate art form. A web series called Yacht Rock launched in 2005 and introduced the genre to a generation that had never heard Steal Away on the radio the first time. Suddenly, the smooth West Coast sound that Elektra had declared dead was being celebrated, analyzed, and loved by people who weren't alive when it was recorded. Steal Away was everywhere again. In films, in television episodes, in the pilot of Red Oaks, in Better Call Saul, in the Jim Carrey film I Love You, Phillip Morris, in the comedy MacGruber. The song Elektra decided was a relic kept showing up in the cultural conversation. Not as a joke, as a genuine piece of music that people wanted to hear. And Robbie Dupree, the man the label had dropped mid-session, was the one who had written it. In 2010, he appeared on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon as part of Fallon's ongoing tribute to yacht rock. He performed Steal Away to an audience that reacted the way audiences react when they hear a song they love and had forgotten they loved. He was still the same singer, still the same voice. The Brooklyn soul and the Sam Cooke precision and the warmth that had made summer of 1980 his summer. All of it still there. The label had declared him outdated. The song had outlasted the label's opinion by 4 decades and counting. You probably sang along to Steal Away without knowing any of this. You heard it in a restaurant or coming out of someone's car, and it felt effortless. That is what the best yacht rock does. It hides how much work went into it. It hides the years in Woodstock and the $40 and the carpet truck and the mid-session phone call that ended everything. What it cannot hide, what nothing can hide, is the irony of what Elektra Records actually said when they pulled the plug. They said his West Coast sound was outdated. They said the market had moved on. They said Robbie Dupree was a relic of a moment that had passed. Meanwhile, Nile Rodgers, the guitarist who had stood next to Dupree in New World Rising in 1970, playing the same Greenwich Village clubs, part of the same Nobody band, had become one of the most successful producers and musicians in the history of popular music. Chic, Diana Ross, David Bowie, Madonna, Daft Punk. Nile Rodgers built an empire. Robbie Dupree loaded carpet onto trucks and got dropped mid-session. They started in the same room. That detail is not meant to diminish Dupree. It is meant to illustrate how thin the line is between the artist who gets the sustained push and the artist who gets 2 singles and a termination notice. Rodgers had the right collaborators at the right moment. Dupree had the right song at the right moment, and a label that decided one moment was enough. After Elektra, the story continued in the way these stories tend to continue, quietly, without the infrastructure that turns effort into visibility. A third album eventually came out in 1989 on Beverly Records, Carried Away, 7 years after the label had stopped his sessions. It did not chart. A fourth album followed in 1993 on a Japanese label called Polystar. Then more records, independent releases, collaborations, a live album, work with keyboardist David Sancious, formerly of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. A slow, determined effort to keep making music on his own terms because the major label terms had expired and nobody was offering new ones. He kept touring. Japan embraced him. Scandinavia embraced him. Europe embraced him. The audiences in those places understood what they were hearing in a way that Elektra's accounting department never did. He was not a failed artist in those rooms. He was the man who made Steal Away. And Steal Away was enough, more than enough. But here is the business reality that never changes. The song has been played on American radio over 4 million times. 4 million spins means 4 million moments when a listener heard the song, and someone somewhere collected a check. Royalties flow when songs play. Rights generate income. The machinery of music publishing does not stop just because a label drops an artist. It keeps running. It keeps earning. Robbie Dupree made the song. He did not make the infrastructure. And the infrastructure, in the world of 1980 music business contracts, did not always run back to the person who sang it. He built the perfect soft rock moment. He delivered it exactly when the world was ready to receive it. And then a corporate decision interrupted a recording session, and the machine moved on to the next thing. Steal Away did not move on. It stayed. It is still there. 4 million spins and counting. Still showing up in television episodes. Still playing in the background of scenes set in summer. Still sounding effortless. Still sounding like it cost nothing to make. It cost a decade of obscurity and $40 and a carpet truck and a mid-session phone call. It cost everything Robbie Dupree had. Here is what you take with you. Robbie Dupree did not fail. The industry processed him and moved on. Those are different things. He had the voice. He had the songs. He had the decade of work that made the effortless moment possible. What he did not have was a label willing to treat a number 6 hit as the beginning of something instead of the end. The next time Steal Away comes on, in a restaurant, in a film, on a playlist someone built for a drive with the windows down, listen to what is actually there. The Brooklyn soul underneath the California shine. The Sam Cooke precision in a voice that was never supposed to be this smooth and somehow always was. The keyboard groove that someone once called a ripoff, that 4 million radio spins later, is simply one of the defining sounds of its era. That sound did not come from a label. It came from a street corner in East New York, a club in Greenwich Village, 7 years in Woodstock, $40, and a carpet truck. It came from a man who gave away a Mercury Records deal because it didn't feel right, and then built something better from scratch. Elektra said the sound was outdated. The sound outlasted Elektra. Now here is what you are going to do. You are going to steal away from whatever you were doing before this video and smash that subscribe button. Hit the like button while you are at it. You have earned the right to feel good about that after sitting with this story. And to my subscribers, you already know, you rock. Thank you for being here.